From the Oklahoman newsroom, it is time for Thunder Thursday, our weekly extended look at Thunder basketball. I'm joined here in studio by fellow columnist Barry Trammell and Thunder beat writer Eric Horn. By the way, I'm Jenny Carlson. Don't think I mentioned that, but whatever. Guys, let's hop into this question. Thunder's been slumping. It hasn't been playing as well as it did right before the All-Star break. We really felt like this was a team on the cusp of contending, breaking through, now reverting, guys. Eric, what do you peg as what's gone wrong during this recent slump?
Well, they get off to terrible starts is one thing. I think in the first half of games in the last 8 games, they have one of the worst points per 100 possessions in the league. I think Golden State's only been worse. Obviously, Golden State has their margin of error is greater because they have better players. So the Thunder's got to start games better. They've got to lock in more defensively. I think that there's some just inherent problems that they have, starting with the guards. Dennis Schroeder's a small guy who gets caught up on screens. Russell Westbrook's a guy who doesn't put in a ton of effort defensively night in and night out. And they're just leaving Steven Adams on an island when it comes to pick and roll defense. And teams have had enough film on these guys to tear them apart at this point. So the Thunder really needs to refocus, recommit themselves to the defensive end, because as we've talked about all season, that's going to be the thing that they can carry with them throughout the entire season. You can't expect them to shoot 40% from three for the rest of the season. We've already seen a little bit of regression from some of their younger guys in terms of the hot three-point shooting they started, the year with in 2019. So they've got to get their defensive commitment back to where it was, in the beginning of the season.
Barry, starting with that game against Sacramento here, lost 4, and now it's losing 6 of 7 as they head into these games out west. Portland on Thursday night, Clippers on Friday night. What do you peg as the core issues with this recent slump?
Well, it meshes together. Thunder was excellent defensively before the new year. January gets here, they actually find their offensive stroke, start shooting much better, became, frankly, a good shooting team, moved into the top 15 in three-point percentage, for crying out loud. But their defense slacked off, still kept winning. Sort of seems like a mentality developed inside that said, you know what, we don't have to sell out defensively. We're good enough to win. Now the shooting slump, and they don't have that defensive edge. So this is a team that has to win with defense. They have to. It's not really debatable. That's how this team wins. They don't have enough offensive firepower. Maybe if Alex Abrinas was still here knocking down three-pointers, maybe that's different. But it's not. So this is a team that's got to win with defense. They're getting torched on defense, and it's costing them.
By the way, I shortchanged them. Lost 5 of 6, not 6 of 7. Eric, you were going to hop in there.
Oh, well, the Thunder's springing leaks from really a lot of different places. Once they get the defense right, something else will spring a leak. I was looking up some stats yesterday, and in the second half of games in this losing streak, their defense hasn't been that bad. It's actually been pretty solid. They start to fight back once they get down double digits. The problem is in the last 3 or 5 minutes of the game, they can't get a rebound. Teams are getting second chance points on them. They've given up the most second chance points in close games in the last 3 to 5 minutes during this losing streak. So when one thing gets cured, another thing springs up as a problem. And then frankly, you're just not getting consistent performances from guys like Dennis Schroeder, who'd been a real asset to this team offensively in the first couple of months of 2019, and frankly just the entire season. Dennis Schroeder just hasn't been good enough on both ends, and he's a guy that the Thunder was really counting on and still is counting on after the Carmelo Anthony trade to be that basically that other starter, that guy that can alternate with Terrence Ferguson. Dennis Schroeder's got to step his game up because the Thunder's wing depth, as we've seen, has gotten a lot worse. Without Alex Abrinas, Andre Robertson not coming back, Schroeder's got to step his game up big time in these last 18 games or so.
As you're watching Thunder Thursday, remember we are brought to you by Maddie McMillan's. Check them out this March. Obviously, St. Patrick's Day, Irish pub. Hey, why not? Maddie McMillan's has got you set. All right, guys, as we talk about this slump, the Thunder woes, we got to at least acknowledge the fact that playing without Paul George for a good chunk of these games is a part of the issue here. He was back, Barry, in a loss earlier this week. But, they need Paul George, obviously. He's an MVP candidate with this, these games he's missed, maybe not. But that caliber of player, how much have you seen his exit, his absence impact what the Thunder has been able to do and hasn't been able to do?
Massively. I just talked about this is not a great offensive team. They struggle shooting. Paul George is that best option. When you play without him, you're in trouble. He also brings it defensively. So I mean, he's when you lose a guy that does everything, you feel it everywhere. But to me, it's sort of great opportunity because we've been talking for 2-3 months here about Paul George's MVP candidacy, and no greater campaign could be launched than if, now that George is back, than if the Thunder turns it around and takes off again. Now, the schedule is so tough, I don't think that's going to happen. Just playing 500 ball here the next couple of weeks is going to be a mighty accomplishment. But if George could turn the Thunder around, get them back to winning on a big-time level, then his MVP chops would just soar because this team struggled without him, struggled with him in the return game at Minnesota, but he was clearly rusty, and hopefully he snaps out of that. But yeah, this is a guy whose value has been established, and it was a case of for many years this was Kevin Durant's team. Then it became Russell Westbrook's team. To me, it's pretty clear it's Paul George's team in that how he goes, the Thunder goes. The Thunder can live with Russell Westbrook playing poorly from time to time, can't live with Paul George playing poorly, or can't live with George not playing at all.
Eric, as you've watched these games without Paul George, have you seen the impact most on offense or defense? I mean, as well as Paul George was playing offensively, there's no question his defensive prowess is off the charts. Where have you seen it most impacting the Thunder?
I think it depends on game to game. I think in the Philly game, I thought the Thunder's defense was actually pretty solid until they had some mental breakdowns down the stretch. Against a team like Memphis, the Thunder really struggled offensively. And, Memphis is a team that likes to slow you down and grind out possessions. So that was another reason that the Thunder was really struggled to even get to 100 points, or they didn't get to 100 points in that game. And in the other game, what was the other game they played? I can't even remember. It was between Philly and Memphis, and I can't remember. The Spurs.
Yeah.
In the game against the Spurs, they struggled to crack 100 points, and they didn't crack 100 points until the last minute of the game on a garbage layup. So that was kind of a combination of both. The Thunder's defense wasn't very good in that game, but also their offense really struggled. So I think it's been a little bit of both depending on what game you're looking at. Barry's right. Paul George is their best player on both ends, and when he's not playing well, it really hurts this team on both ends. And look, in the Minnesota game, Paul George wasn't there offensively. Later on in the game, he kind of got cooking a little bit. I mean, it took him 25 shots to get 25 points, which isn't very efficient. But frankly, I think his defensive impact in the Minnesota game was missing more than anything. He looked apprehensive to get into contact. This is a guy who likes to use his body when he's guarding guys and getting physical with guys and getting into their shirt. He was confused on some plays when it came to the help when guys were driving past him. He let Andrew Wiggins get past him late in the game, and Karl-Anthony Towns got a big putback on a dunk. So I think that Paul George needs to get his defensive comfort back more than anything, because he said this himself. He finds his game on the defensive end, and then once he establishes that defensive game, then that translates to the offensive end. So his game is predicated on the defense first, and that's where he needs to get his comfort back for the Thunder.
It's ironic that as he sat out, there was a lot of talk with the Thunder. They don't want to rush him back, want to make sure he's fine, got to have him down the stretch. And yet there's that unease, like, how long do you leave him out? I mean, I don't think they would have made a decision based on how the team was playing, Barry, but it's pretty clear they needed him. Do you think there was any pressure to push Paul George back out there to get him going again?
I don't think so. If so, I would be surprised. That's not the way the Thunder appears to have done things for 11 years. So I'd be surprised. I think Paul George was probably itching to play. I think his teammates clearly were itching for him to play. The Thunder's usually pretty cautious about these things. I think, here's the other thing. Paul George's future is owned by the Thunder. If he was a short-timer, maybe trot him out there and say, hey, break every bone you got. He's not. He's not a short-timer. He's signed on for at least 2, maybe 3 more seasons. He's committed to the Thunder. His health is of paramount to this organization. I think they probably played it pretty safe.
I don't think they're going to let him break every bone in his body. Just for a point of context there.
Not good.
Not happening.
Not a good idea.
Eric, Barry mentioned this earlier, that the schedule that the Thunder has coming up, we knew coming out of the All-Star break this was going to be a tough go. It looked that way, and it's playing out that way. We talked about back-to-back Portland, Clippers, then Utah on Monday. I mean, we knew this was going to be tough. Is it crazy to think they're going to get better against Portland, a team that they've beaten every time out this year?
No, I'm kind of on the other side of this. Look, their schedule's really tough, but they kind of have a tendency to kind of elevate their play to the teams that they're playing. I know they got to play teams like Toronto twice, Indiana twice in the next few weeks, but they've traditionally played pretty well against Toronto, who's been a good team. They've gone and played well against Indiana. This is a team that raises its level to the teams that it's playing against. They got to play Golden State again. They got to play Houston again. This really tough stretch that they're on right now. Look, they're going to be playing close games in all three of these games probably. They've played really well against Portland this year. The Utah game is going to come down to probably 2 or 3 possessions. And then the Clippers, they split with them already. So I'd expect the Thunder to be in those games within the last 3 to 5 minutes. The problem is they've got to finish games, and they haven't been doing that as of late. They've got to get on the defensive glass. They cannot allow second chance points to those teams, and that's something that they've really struggled with in this losing streak.
Barry, when you think about these 3 games coming up, if you're the Thunder, do you need to win 2 or 3? I mean, winning all 3 seems like a difficult task, but to really right the ship, do you need to win 2 of these next 3?
Well, yes, that would be very nice. I would take some defeats if they just played well. They didn't get down by 11 points in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. They didn't play uphill the whole dang game and have to stage a rally in the fourth quarter. The one victory in this stretch is their worst game they played maybe all year. They played the ghosts of the Grizzlies and trailed by 13 with 6.5 minutes left and had to rally to win. If they played well in Portland or played well in Staples against the Clippers and lost, I would be encouraged because they're just not playing well. And so, whatever they can get in terms of victory, it's going to be tough to build up some wins against this schedule. But to me, don't get too caught up in the standings, which I do all the time, or victory, which I do all the time. Just worry about possession by just playing well, defending on a regular basis, getting good shots. If they go in, fine. If they don't, can't worry about it. Just play better.
Yeah, and part of the problem for the Thunder in this stretch is they haven't forced a lot of turnovers, and that's even with Paul George too. They've been a team that's been one of the highest turnover rate teams in terms of their opponents all season. And look, that's a tough, dangerous way to live when you predicate your defense on forcing a lot of turnovers. But if the Thunder does that, if they get back to their principles on the defensive glass, I think that's going to make things a lot easier for their offense too.
With this schedule, Barry, you said don't get hung up in the results, don't get hung up in the standings, but this is the time of year when everybody starts looking at that, where the Thunder could finish. I mean, if they get going again, maybe, who knows, but where's the top end, bottom end in your mind?
I don't know about the top end, but if they don't start playing better, they're going to, not they might, they're going to finish 7th in the West if they don't start playing better. If they play for the last 4 weeks the way they played these last 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to finish 7th. They're going to finish ahead of San Antonio, but the Clippers have an easy schedule ahead of them. Clippers have 5 road games the rest of the season. Utah has got an incredibly easy schedule, and the Jazz are playing well. The Blazers are playing great. The Rockets are playing great. Denver's not falling. Golden State's Golden State. This is a team headed for 7th place if they don't turn it around, which, heck, for all I know, 7th is fine. Got to go play Denver or Houston or somebody. Pull an upset, what difference does that make? But if you want to finish 7th, the Thunder has mastered that test. They are showing you how to finish 7th. Play the way they've been playing.
Eric, is this a team destined for 7th?
I don't know if they're destined for 7th or not, but I mean, let's say they do fall to the 7th seed. Do you like their chances any better against Utah than you do against Denver? Frankly, they might have a better chance against Denver because Nikola Jokic isn't a guy that's going to clog up the paint like Rudy Gobert does. Russell Westbrook might have more success against a Denver team. Now, Denver's beaten them 3 times already this season, and they seem to be a tougher team that can grind out games at the end of games and grind out wins. But to me, I don't know if the Thunder, I mean, obviously they need or they would like to have home court advantage, but I don't think that Denver's necessarily a tougher task than going and playing Utah or Houston with James Harden. So to me, no matter who the Thunder plays in the first round, they're going to have a tough time getting out of the first round regardless, because they just have some defensive flaws that they need to tighten up. And Russell Westbrook needs to get back to where he's shooting efficiently and he can get to the rim. If he's going to struggle, the Thunder's going to struggle in any series they're playing in, regardless of who the matchup is.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, as you look up and down the Western Conference standings, you can find danger.
Yeah.
The signs are everywhere.
When you're not playing well,
Yeah.
and when teams have been picking you apart defensively for the better part of 2.5 months, it doesn't really matter who you get in the playoffs. You've got to shore up your defense, and you've got to get to where you're playing back to your identity again, forcing turnovers, rebounding the ball, getting on the offensive glass. If the Thunder's not doing that, it doesn't matter who they play in the first round because they're going to lose.
Guys, as we're looking at the standings, right now, your top 8 teams, there's a line of demarcation between 8 and 9. Clippers at 8, Sacramento at 9. Sacramento's 12 games back of first place. LA and actually the Spurs, both with the same record, 8 games back. So clearly some distance there. Do you see anybody that's not in the top 8 right now jumping up? It sounds like, I mean, it seems like it's going to be a tough
it's gonna be
task.
tough.
Are those 8 teams?
I think we know the 8
Yeah.
because Clippers aren't falling
Right.
because so the Kings would have to pick this to catch the Spurs. So you're asking if the Sacramento Kings can catch the San Antonio Spurs 4 games back with 17, 18 to play. I don't think Greg Popovich is going to let that happen.
All right, lots yet to be determined in this NBA season. We'll continue to have your best Thunder coverage anywhere, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com every day in the Oklahoman. Remember, Thunder Thursday, brought to you by Maddie McMillans.